Always the job of the last speaker is to do a shtickle cleanup. He has to take up everything that was said and try to put it all and be mesakem it and try to see if we could come out with something clear. So I would like to, for 5 minutes only, make a sikkum from everything we learned up to this moment. We learned that Amir La'akum is a shvus. We learned that asking a goy to do a melacha is osur. We learned that there's an issa to do an amira. We learned that there's an issa to be nana from melachas akum that's done b'Shabbos. And we learned that when an akum does a melacha on your behalf, when he is not paid, and you have direct hanoas haguf from the melacha, one has to be moiche and not allow him to do the melacha. Now, I packed a lot in those few sentences, but for those who are here, that should suffice. So again, you're not allowed to be mitzava nochri, you're not allowed to be nana from his melacha, and you have to be moiche if he does a melacha for you without getting paid, if there's a direct hano to your guf from his melacha. Now, the moment he gets paid, we have two types of goyim. We have a schir yoim and we have a kablan. We will explain what a schir yoim is and what a kablan is in a couple of moments. But we have a schir yoim and a kablan. A schir yoim, it makes no difference if you asked him to do the melacha, as long as he's doing it, and he's doing it on your behalf, that is forbidden. That's osur. And therefore, you must be moiche. Irrelevant if there's an hanoas haguf, there's no hanoah. If he's doing work for you and he's paid to do so, you need to be moiche. You're not allowed to let him do that because he's considered doing it for you. If he's a kablan, then it's totally the opposite. Once he's a kablan, even if he's doing something that you have a hanoas haguf, since he's paid to do it and he's a kablan, we consider him doing it for himself. And once he's doing it for himself, then you do not have to be moiche, except when you don't have the head of kablan, which we will go through all the scenarios. This was a brief tamtzis of everything we learned. Now, if you didn't catch everything, it's not the end of the world. But it was good for those who held cheshbon. Now we'll begin what really I'm supposed to talk about. We have a schir yoim. A schir yoim is somebody who's paid. So let's give the simple example. You have workers in the Philippines that do work for you. You send them data entry. They add, they just keep it, they're like klotzes. They just keep putting it in. They keep entering the data. They enter it one day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. They keep going at it. So the halacha is that you need to be moiche. And you need to tell them that they're not allowed to work for you on Shabbos. If they do, you will not pay them. If you don't do that, you're violating Chazal's issa of Amir La'akum Shvus. Again, you didn't tell them to do it, but if they do it, they are working for you. And therefore, that's Amir La'akum Shvus. If you can assume that the stomach is that they work 7 days a week, then you need to let them know that they can't. You're asking me? It's not part of the shir. Let's leave it for afterwards. I think you go by both lakula. but some people may say the other way. Now, if a Schir Yoim could do, you have him work 40 hours a week, he can pick any 40 hours they want. Rabbi Frank mentioned in this morning's shir, it's a machloikis hapoiskim. The halacha is, for the most part, we hold it's aseh. Even though they can do Schir Yoim whenever they want, they're always considered working on your behalf, and therefore it's aseh. It makes no difference if you're Chassidish, you're Litvish, the Rav Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah both hold, you're not allowed to. Now, if I have somebody, a goyta who's working in my house on Shabbos or Yom Tov, she's considered a Schir Yoim. I'm not allowed to be meramis to her to do a malacha because remiza will not help. Since she's my Schir Yoim, she works for me. If I am meramis for her to do a malacha, it doesn't do anything, because even though I was not mitzvah her to do the malacha, and she understands on her own to do it, assuming that she's paid to do this malacha, that would be oseh. Amira la amira, to a person who's a Schir Yoim. That means, I have an employee, I have a problem, Shabbos is something that needs to get done. It's a big problem, it needs to get done. But this employee of mine, I can't tell them to do it on Shabbos. So I want to tell another employee of mine to tell this employee to make sure that it gets done on Shabbos. Since the second employee is my employee, it makes no difference how she got the instructions, so long as she's my employee, that's a problem. Because since she's my Schir Yoim, she cannot do it on Shabbos. Now, let's discuss a kablan. A kablan, the simple kablan is a person gives his clothing into the cleaners. He doesn't give them instructions when it should be ready. They usually tell him when it's going to be ready. Even though he knows that there's a possibility that they will perform this work on Shabbos, he does not have to be moiche. He's allowed to allow them to clean his clothing, even though they will clean it on Shabbos. If someone sends a package, FedEx, and there's no set time, or if there is a set time, it has to be there within 3 days, and there's no problem in these 3 days for it to get there without any malachas on Shabbos, that as well is a kabbalan, because a kabbalan means that they have a specific job. They're achroi for this job. They need to get this job done. That's what I pay them for. It has nothing to do with their time, and therefore that's a straight out kabbalan, and that is mutter to do. If somebody gives his car into a mechanic, and mechanics charge their fees by labor, by parts plus labor. Labor is charged in an hourly fee, but it's a job-oriented employment. That means they never tell me originally how many hours they're going to work, and they're achroi. The point is they're achroi to get the car fixed. I don't want to know any issues. I don't want to know any hours. I want to know, I gave you my car, I got it back fixed. So long as it's a job-oriented thing, even though they actually figure out how to charge me is by how many hours, and if there's more hours, they'll charge me more, and if there's less hours, they'll charge me less, that is a kabbalan. And therefore, it's mutter, even though they will be doing work on Shabbos. If I hire an attorney, we already heard, if I hire an attorney to review a contract, that's a kabbalan. He has a specific job, he has to review it, he has to give his comments, he has to make his markups, his changes, and he sends it to you, and his job is performed. Even though he charges you by the hour, he's a kabbalan. His job needs to be performed from the beginning to end. One can say that if I send an attorney to court, that he's not a kabbalan. And the reason is because he has no specific job. He has to make sure there's nothing that I can hold him accountable at the end. You know, your job, you didn't perform it. So long as he represents you straight for those many hours, even though there's no specific job that I can say to him, you did it. Now, yeah, you could say he did it. He was there all 7 hours in court and he didn't stop yakking. But he didn't have a specific job that can be held accountable for. I believe he's a schir yoim and he's not a kabbalan. Sometimes, let's wait for questions because there's a lot to cover, if you don't mind. If somebody, you need to hire him and needs to get a job done, and he doesn't know how long it's going to take him, and he doesn't know how much work, he says to you, listen here, I'm going to get the job done, but I want payment per day. Takes a day, it's a day. Or they say originally, I'm going to pay you for 2 days. May take a day and a half, may take a day. This is what I'm paying you for 2 days of work. Your fee is kach v'kach for 2 days of work. That's what I'm paying you to get the job done. That is a kabbalan. Even though he got paid per day, he has a job to do. How you pay him, you use time, it makes no difference to us. And that is the halacha of Reish Mem Zayin Sif Gimel, and therefore, that is a kabbalan. Some people hire a marketing team where they have somebody who's in charge of all their marketing for the year. They either charge them a monthly fee or a yearly fee. And anytime they need anything to do with marketing, whether it is a logo or an ad or some kind of blowing their name out in the streets. And this is their job. And whenever you call them, they need to answer your questions and help you. And they have a service fee per month, per year, whatever it should be. That's called a schir chodesh or a schir shana lemelacha miyuchedes, for a certain type of thing. Now, this person is considered a kabbalan. Now, this is a chiddush to you. He's paid yearly, but he's a kabbalan, and the reason is because he has a right to take off whenever he wants. He's never only meshubah to work for you. He's only achroi to get jobs done. Anytime throughout the year you need the job to get done, he's achroi for the job. He's not a secretary. A secretary, even if you're going to tell me the only thing she needs to do is answer the telephone, but she needs to be present. And she needs to be there, and she needs to stand there and answer phone calls. So we look at her as not a job-oriented or an achrayus. She has no achrayus for anything. She's there like a klotz to answer the telephones. But if you have a job, and you don't have to be available, punkt, a whole day sit and just wait for work. You have a contract that whenever there's a job that needs to get done, you get it done. That person is considered a kabbalan. But this kabbalanus has some issues to it, which we will touch on soon. Now, a super who runs a piece of real estate, you give it over to a superintendent. He is in charge of all repairs that need to get done. He is a socher l'shana limlachos miyuchados. That means he has jobs. If a toilet breaks, if this breaks, he has certain achrayas. He doesn't have to be available. Most supers, now, very carefully, we're not talking about a super who is over his head with work, that he doesn't have a moment to breathe, and basically this is what he does. Many people that own real estate have either a small building or they have a couple of units, and the person has another job even, and he comes and he does, but he's socher l'shana limlachos miyuchados. This is a kabbalan, and he would have the hatter of a kabbalan. Now, doesn't always mean it's mutter. We still have to go through all the issues with a kabbalan, but he, in theory, is a kablan and not a schir yoim. Many wealthy people have what they call a driver. But he's really not only a driver. We'll call him a nice form of a shlak-shamus. What does that mean? It means like this, that any little jobs throughout the day that he needs personal things to get done, the person gets done. So the person needs to drive someplace, he drives him. If he needs something else from him, he gets something else from him. But the person may even have another job, or he spends half his day shopping for his wife. Whenever he needs him, he calls him, he says, okay, this needs to get done. Do me a favor, I'm flying next week to France. Book me a ticket. I need to pick up for my wife something from the grocery store. He picks up something from the grocery store. He is called a sochir lechol ha-melochos. He's a schir shana lechol ha-melochos. Which means any jobs I give him, he's got to do. But he's not paid to be available to me 9 to 5, sit there. He has achrayas and take jobs to me. It's called sochir lechol ha-melochos. Now, sochir lechol ha-melochos has its own issues, but in theory, he's a kabbalan. The Noid Yehuda tells us a tremendous chiddush. He says, even if I have a schir yoim, if I give him a little bit of profit share, a little, he no longer has the problem of a schir yoim. He falls into the heter of kablonus and arisus, and he now becomes mutter. Which means, even though really he's hired by me, and that should make it a problem, when I also have on top of that another reason for why he's doing it, because he has a profit share, he becomes mutter. The Noid Yehuda says that this applies even if you have a little bit of profit share. The Chassam Soif is not so excited about that, and he says it has to be something substantial, that it should be a real motivation why he's doing it, besides the fact that it's schir yoim. The poskim are mavur that one is allowed to play tricks and try to turn people into kablonim that shouldn't be. That means they don't have a problem that it looks like funny that you turn this person into a kablon. No, you're allowed to turn the person into a kablon. And they actually suggested it. They said that this isn't a good idea to get out of the problem of Hilchos Shabbos where you have a schir yoim. So if you have a call center that answers emergency calls on Shabbos, you are allowed to tell them, listen here, you are not employed by me over Shabbos. I will not pay you an hourly fee. But every phone call you pick up, you get $25. So now, you turn them from a schir yoim into someone who's hired by you for the day or for time, and you turn them into a kabbalan. They have a job to do. Every phone call you pick up, you get a certain amount of money. Now, if you tell them they have to do that on Shabbos, we'll have its own issues. But in theory, this person now is a kabbalan, and he's no longer a schir yoim. And therefore, he will have the terim of kabbalanus, and this is a trick you're allowed to do. And this is the creativity that's necessary if you're going to look for a terim to run things. Many times this is very useful. And I actually use this heter once in a while to try to turn the thing into a kabbalanus. And that would be something that's mutter. Now, you have to be careful when you turn something into a kabbalan. Many times, on one level, they're a kabbalan, and the level below them, there's schir yoim. So you think you got rid of the problem by taking care of one employee that's on top, but everyone who's under them is still a problem of schir yoim. But it does come useful. If I hire a company to do a certain work, and they have people that work under them that are schir yoims, I don't have an issue of schir yoim. Because since those chiyurim do not work for me, they work for him. As long as the one who I hired is only job-oriented, he's a kabbalan, I no longer have the problem of schiyurim. But if the people on bottom of him are also paid by me, then it makes no difference. The fact that I turned the first guy into a kabbalan, everyone under will still be an issue of schiyurim. So if taking the pet peeve of all these shiurim, if you take, let's say, a nursing home and you turn the management somehow into a kabbalan, it still won't help you for all the nurses that are under. But if you would take a management company to manage your entire nursing home, and you would hire someone to be a kabbalan, that means they're paid a certain amount for jobs that need to get done, and figure out how to structure them to become a kabbalan. And they were to hire all the people under them and would be their employees. You would now leave the problem of schiyurim, and you would enter into the sugya of kablonos, and you may have more heterim or more ways to deal with the issues that come up on Shabbos. So these are some of the tricks that are used to be matir. So basically, we have a schiyurim and a kabbalan. A schiyurim is work-oriented, and a kabbalan is job and achrayus-oriented. A kabbalan is mutter to work on Shabbos, like we said. There are 4 exclusions. Unfortunately, they're very big exclusions. And therefore, they make lots of problems. I'm going to list all 4 exclusions, and then we're going to try to deal with them as best as we can in the little time we have left. First, we have the first exclusion is that a kabbalan needs to be kotzatz. We're going to spend very little time talking about that, but it needs a ktsitza. I'll explain what that means in a minute. Problem number 2, a kabbalan cannot be koiveya melachtoi b'Shabbos. That means you cannot tell him he must work on Shabbos. If he must work on Shabbos, you no longer have the heter of kabbalan. Number 3, you cannot have that there's a harvoche for Yisrael on Shabbos, while there's no harvoche for the goy. That means, if the goy does not benefit from working on Shabbos, and the yid does benefit from working on Shabbos, that's the Mari Havuav that you heard this morning, and I will elaborate a little bit on that soon. That would be a potential 3rd problem. The 4th problem is maris ayin. When there's situations that it does not look like he's a kabbalan, or it may look like he's koiveya malachtoi b'Shabbos, that's a 4th problem. So again, we have 4 issues that every time you want to be matter something b'kablanos, you need to make a cheshbon. 1, did he have a ktsitza? 2, were you koiveya malachtoi b'Shabbos? 3, is there benefit for the Yisrael and no benefit for the goy of him working on Shabbos? 4, whether there's maris ayin or not. Now, if you're able to do that every single time, you're roy to paskin shailis on Hilchos Kablanos. Realize there's another issue that's an elephant in the room that we didn't touch at all, which we're not going to touch. And that is, let's say it's true, you have all that Torah, everything worked, and the guy did it for you on Shabbos. Are you allowed to actually benefit from it on Shabbos? That's the is of Nena Mimelachas Shabbos. That's its own sugya by kablanis, whether there's a is, and that is very neged the geshaila. When you get a package on Shabbos from UPS delivered at your door, whether you're allowed to open that package, or you're not allowed to open that package, you're allowed to benefit from that, or you're not allowed to benefit from that. But we're not going to touch that right now. What we're going to do is deal with the 4 exclusions of kablanos. So exclusion number 1 is there needs to be a ktsitza. A ktsitza means that when you hire a kabbalan, there has to be very explicit terms that what he's getting paid. If you leave the terms of payment murky, and this is a tool that many business owners like to use because they don't like to pay people a lot of money. So they take advantage of sometimes of an employee. They'll tell him, you know what, do a renovation job on that building out there in Wichita, Kansas. He likes Wichita, Kansas. And you can get it done, and I'll pay you. He, on purpose, skips out what he's going to pay him. That's going to be the negotiations when they eventually have to get paid. The poskim say that this ruins the heta of Kabbalah a little bit. Because at this point, his motivation for the money is a little questionable. Because he's not sure what kind of money he's going to really be getting. So therefore, at this point, it's not so posh that you have the heta of Kabbalah. There may be a difference between Erev Shabbos, Dalet Ve'eh. This is its own halachas, and I'm not going to get into them because they're complex. But it's important. There needs to be a ktsitza. Another thing that falls into this issue is what happens if he does it for free. But we know that the cheapest way to pay for something is money. I learned that a long time ago. When you take favors, you end up paying and paying and paying and paying. There's no end. But sometimes a guy does something for free, he really has another motivation. His motivation is some kind of benefit from you. That should also be a kabbalah. And there, again, we have a machloikis rishonim in certain cases whether he is a kabbalah or not. Definitely, if he offers his services, he's considered a kabbalah. But again, these are another complex. I just wanted to touch on it that you know it exists. This is Siman Reish Mem Zayin, which is a siman that for the most part was skipped over. If you look there, there's halachas about these two topics. Let's move on. The guy did a ktsitza. He made up exactly, you're getting paid $5. So we're good. The next problem is koiveya malachta b'Shabbos. One is not allowed to tell a kabbalah, true, you're a kabbalah, you're job-oriented, but you need to get the job done, you need to work in Shabbos. If you do that, it's a problem. Now the question is why? Because really, this shouldn't be a problem. So I told you to do it in Shabbos. Who are you working for? Adayda the Nafshei? So good to go. You're working for yourself. What's the problem? So I told you to do it on Shabbos. You're allowed to work for yourself on Shabbos. So I told you. So I told you. And the answer is that Chazal look at this, that if you're delegating to a person when he has to work, he looks like he's doing something on your behalf, not on his own behalf. That means, if I want to do it on my behalf, on my own, I have my job, take it, do me a favor, if you have not, it's not under your achrayus, it's not your problem, so just butt out. Let me do my thing and get out of my life. If you're telling me exactly when to do it, means you're still involved. If you're still involved, then when I'm working for you, I look like I'm working for you. Now, he's not a schir yoim, he's a kabbalah. But he's a kabbalah that looks like he's working for you because he was given a job to work on Shabbos. In that case, it's oseh. So, let's begin talking about the din of koivei malachta b'Shabbos. The first case is if somebody is told specifically, I go call up FedEx and I tell them, it's Erev Shabbos now, overnight this package to this person. So these FedEx are kablonim, they're job-oriented, but they must do it in Shabbos. They have no choice. Such a case is oseh. There are achroilim that look to come up with different heterim, such as ribu b'shiyurim or amira la'amira. We can have long discussions whether these heterim apply or not. In my belief, they do not apply. But there is an eitzah, if you need to, b'mokam hefsid, get this done. If you look in a gewaldige book written by Rabbi Kushner, he tells us a moiredige eitzah. go to a company like Drop Shop or one of these places, Drop Stop, one of these places that send out UPS packages. They will then send it to UPS. So that will be Amira La Amira. In that case, it's Amira La Amira. And therefore, if it's a Mokam Hefsid, where the Mishnah Berurah is Mekel and Amira La Amira, one would be able to do that. So, in theory though, this is a problem. You cannot send something, express mail, that has to go on Shabbos. If I give something to an attorney and he tells me, I tell him I need this done by Monday. And he tells me this is 40 hours of work. I don't give a hoot. 40, 70, 90, get it done by Monday. So basically, if you do the math, he's going to be working over Shabbos. You cannot do that. A newspaper delivery, 7 days a week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The New York Times has to show up by your front door. Now, I don't know why anyone's still getting the New York Times. We have already so many Jewish publications. But for some reason, this guy needs the New York Times. So a 7-week delivery is a kabbalan. They're delivering a paper to you. But they're delivering it to you on Shabbos because you demand that that newspaper be delivered to you on Shabbos. Says in Moshe, the Britzin Roof, it's also, he can't believe that there's Jews that are doing this. You have to receive what he writes and show your mom, she can't believe it. So you cannot have 7-day delivery. Rabbi Kushner in his book says you can send an email or make a telephone call telling them that they do not have to deliver it on Shabbos. I believe you would have to tell them that you don't have to deliver it at all, because if you tell them that they have to deliver it on Sunday to you, then you're basically telling them that they have to turn their whole company upside down for them to remember that your newspaper needs to get to you on Sunday. But he says that that would work. One can be mefakfik whether there exists such a mitzias of telling them when they really are not goyres anything you say. But if you say that this is something that is work, so you would have to l'chalapochas tell them, you cannot do this. Amazon Prime. If you order Amazon and you have Prime, they need to deliver it within 2 days. 2 business days. So depending, 1 day, 2 days. Sean? So, lefi what you look at the instructions, if it says 1 day or 2 days, if the 1 day and 2 days from when you call, it's impossible except unless they go on Shabbos, and you pay for the service, and this service, this is one of the perks, you have a problem with kovei malachta b'Shabbos. And therefore, l'chol hapachas, you'll have to be moidia them that they do not have to deliver this package within this period of time. Whether that does something or not, again, one can... Oh, we're going to talk about delivering by night and all the wacky efshoriusin that it's possible for them to do. If you give me 1 moment. So let's talk about now, says the Mishnah Berurah, somebody gives work to a goy, and he tells him, get it done. Now the goy could be ma'anis himself and work at night. Says the Mishnah Berurah b'shem ha'pri megodim that this is called kovei malachta b'Shabbos because people are not expected to be ma'anis themselves to work by night. L'omar zeh, we have the El Yerabah that the Shar HaTziyun brings that argues in the Pri Megodim. And there's a wonderful sefer by Reb Simcha Bonim Cohen that he wrote 20-something or 30-something years ago, where he brings a whole list, including the Igris Moshe, that seem to say that if he could work at night or he could work on Sundays, it's not a problem. I'm not sure there's a machloikis. I believe that it has to do with what happens to typical people. That means it's clear that if he has to work at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's called kaveh malachta b'Shabbos. But if he has to work late hours, which he would do if it loinzich, an attorney works till 12, 1 o'clock for the right client, when there's the right date, there's the right deadlines. They do it. They get it done. They work sometimes Sunday also if they need to get it done. That's not called being ma'anis himself. That's called putting himself a little bit at discomfort to get the job done. That would be called l'toivas atzmoi. But if he has to do something that's considered whacked, no normal human being does it, even though he can possibly do it, that's not considered, that is considered kovei melachto b'Shabbos. Therefore, if I find a guy on vacation with his wife in Honolulu, and I tell him to get the job done, and the only way to do it is by cutting his vacation down and leave his screaming wife in Honolulu, that's called being ma'anisim. That's kovei melachto b'Shabbos. If I have a company, and I tell the company, get this work done by a certain time, and they can be open Sunday and get the job done. But for a company to stay open Sunday, they have to rehire all their employees, restructure their whole business. That's not called they could do it. That's called kovei melachto b'Shabbos. If you have FedEx that's sending shipments and they go, planes fly out, but they can't fly out every 4 minutes because they'll go broke. They can only send out a plane once in 2 days. So if it's impossible for them to do this in a different way, except what they're doing, unless they turn their whole company upside down, that's called kovei melachto b'Shabbos. So often I hear a Teirim, yeah, if they wanted, they could fly a plane today, fly to Timbuktu, or Dubai. I get the question with Dubai. They can fly to Dubai tomorrow, and it'll be there before Shabbos. The only problem is that the company also has to send another few packages, not only yours. If they sell a plane just for your package, it'll cost $40,000 to deliver your package. So that's called kovei melachto b'Shabbos. What? If it's flying anyway, now you want to go with ribu b'shiurim. Once you go with ribu b'shiurim, you run into the issue of ribu b'shiurim. You realize that the last leg, when they're going to deliver the package, is going to be for you. So very often, I know with Dubai, it's very hard when to send packages. It's mamish, you have to send it out by a certain time, otherwise you run into Shabbos. And especially when you have a Yom Tov season like we had in Elul, your kamat could close down your business. Because with all the Yom Tovim, with the Shabbos, if you had to cheshbon when to send it, it was pretty difficult. Good, if you could figure it out, that it didn't do, but you realize, you say the last leg. It's not only the last leg. If they have to transfer the package from one plane to the next plane, they have to transfer each package. Now you have ribu b'shiurim. What happens if your package are all the packages? You can't say Roth. The Rav has to be a genius to figure it out whether it's not a problem or it is a problem. But definitely, there's a problem of kovei melachto b'Shabbos. Let's wait for questions later. Yeah. If the next flight out needs to fly on Shabbos, then you have a problem. Yeah, but you're telling them that you're paying for them to do this. Now, what? If a person gives his car into a mechanic, and the mechanic tells him clearly, I will be doing it on Shabbos, that's not called kovei melachto b'Shabbos. So long as he's the one who picks, even though he let you know before, that he's going to be doing it on Shabbos, that's not an issue. Many times you call a repairman and he tells you, listen here, I'm booked. I have many, many, many different jobs to do. The first time I can get to your job is Shabbos. So I can come Shabbos. I believe it's not called kovei melachto b'Shabbos. And the reason is Because when it loins for the guy, he switches the order. If it's a good client, he just turns it around and he goes to this one first. So that means he's making a decision, really, even though he tells you that he's very ethical, who's first in the line. But I believe that that's something that's not called Kaveh Malachta B'Shabbos, and therefore it's mutter. If the guy understands from the Yid that he wants it to happen on Shabbos, but the Yid did not tell him that it has to happen on Shabbos, I believe that that's not called Kaveh Malachta B'Shabbos. Since he did not get directions to send it on Shabbos, it's not called Kaveh Malachta B'Shabbos. Now, a Yid gave a person, he has an employee, he told him, do me a favor and buy me this part, because it comes Monday morning, I need this part. Now, the stores are closed on Sunday. The stores are already closed on Friday. The only time for him to buy this part is on Shabbos. Is one allowed to tell the guy to buy him this part? Is that called Koiveya Melachtoi B'Shabbos? An auction we could talk about. But let's first talk about this. Again, a person has to buy a part. The store is closed now, and it's closed Sunday. He needs it Monday morning. The only time for him to buy it is on Shabbos. It would seem that such a thing should be Koiveya Melachta B'Shabbos. Except that we have a halacha that the Beis Yosef says that if the Yom HaShuk in this city is Shabbos, I'm allowed to tell the guy to go pick up something, to purchase for me something, even though I know the only day he's going to be able to purchase this is on Shabbos. Comes the Magen Avraham, he says, no, you can't do this. Only if you give it to him on Wednesday or Thursday. But if you give it to him Erev Shabbos, you can't do it. But on Wednesday and Thursday, you could. Comes the Taz and the Mishnah Brura and all, they say, no, you can't do this at all. So, if we're going to hold like the Taz and the Mishnah Brura, it's simple. It's Kaveh Malachta B'Shabbos, and it's a problem. But what could be the reasoning why this should not be Kaveh Malachta B'Shabbos? So, there's a wonderful sefer out there written by Rabbi Kushner. And he says a novel approach. He says that in order for one to have Koiveya Melachta B'Shabbos, one needs to be the one that he is the one that sets the terms of when this malacha will be done. But if circumstances around him set the tone of when the work needs to be done, that would not be Koiveya Melachta B'Shabbos. And therefore, his example is that if somebody has an employee and he sends him to fix someone's oven, and the person who's asking for the service call asks for it to work to be done on Shabbos, since the boss is not telling him he has to do it on Shabbos, but the client that's about to get the service says to him, I want it done by you, should come do it for me on Shabbos, he believes that that's not called Kaveh Melachta B'Shabbos. Right. Right. So Rabbi Kushner says, the Taz would not agree with me. Says he, no. The Taz is talking about where he knew when he sent him to buy it, he knew that the circumstances already tell him that it has to be bought on Shabbat. That's forbidden. But if he didn't know when he hired him, that is... It wasn't second. Why? Circumstances later happen later, not he knew or not knew. There's new circumstances that happened afterwards, and that, according to Rabbi Kushner, is something that's mutter to do. Now, Rabbi Falk wrote him a tshuva and was not excited about this heter. And he believes that that's not the case. It would be Koiveya Melachta B'Shabbos even if it's not set by you. As long as the circumstances tell us that it's going to have to be done b'Shabbos, it's osir. Now, why would Yom HaShuk be different? So we can give a whole shir on that, but we're not going to spend the time right now. But somebody who has a company, they have a real piece of real estate, they need the snow taken care of. So they have a company and they make up with them. You're going to take away the snow within 12 hours from when there's 2 inches on the ground or 3 inches on the ground. Even Rabbi Kushner agrees that this is forbidden. This is called koivea malachtoi b'Shabbos. The reason for this being is you set the terms that it has to be done on Shabbos because you decided that this is a problem. Your snow needs to be gotten away. It's not circumstances that are set by the situation only, but and also in addition, you said that it has to get done on Shabbos, and therefore, this is something that's also to do. So if you have this problem, you have a problem with the snow, so you need an eitzah. Because if I don't take away the snow, I'm going to have my apartment house empty out. So if you can tell them to come within 25 hours, you're definitely good, because they don't have to come on Shabbos. If you cannot use that heter, then again, amira la'amira would be something that could be helpful. That means one can hire a management company that they're in charge of taking care of the snow. They would hire the actual snow people, and he would even tell the management company that they don't have to take care of it on Shabbos. They could do as they see fit, which would also help out. And then, b'mokem hefsid, which is that people may get hurt, you would have the heter of amira la'amira. What? Maris ayin is another problem. And for the heter of Maris ayin, we also may use the heter of hefsid, which we were supposed to get to. We'll see when. We help it. Let me zip through. Okay. There's still a lot to talk about, but we need to move on. So let's try to cover the next 2 issues. We said, before I get to that, I have to also say the heter of hefsid. It says in Shulchan Aruch, Reish Mem Dalet Sivov, it says in Shulchan Aruch that if somebody hires someone as a kablan and he's koivea malachtoi b'Shabbos, if he's going to have a hefsid or a hefsid meruba, then koivea malachtoi b'Shabbos is mutter. That means we have a kablan, again, very important, he has to be a kablan. If it's koivei malachtoi b'Shabbos, and it's a hefsid meruba, it says in Shulchan Aruch that this is mutter. But this has a lot of caveats. It's not so poshut, this heter. Number 1, what's called a hefsid meruba? Many poskim say that if it's only menias HaRav, that means my business will not earn so much money. That's not called a hefsid meruba. Number 2, so says Shevet HaLevi, I already have 10 businesses. Do I really need business number 11? Is that the heter of hefsid meruba? Shevet HaLevi says, I would say no. V'hu badik u'menuseh, that whoever was soymech on this heter of hefsid meruba had from it big losses. I spoke to the Shevet HaLevi's grandson. He told me, yes, my Zay, that personal experiences with many people that they lost gewalts of money because they were so on the heter of hefsid meruba. you have to question whether that's called a hefsed merubah. Number three, if you yourself never do any work, you're only going to delegate it to some other guy. Many achroinim say, the Chaim Soifer and others say, there's no het of hefsed merubah. So before you use the het of hefsed merubah, make sure you run it past your local rabbi. This is the din of kovei malachto b'Shabbos. Now, we said that there's a third issue, and that is, let's take care of kovei malachto b'Shabbos. Let's say he's kotzatz. Let's say he's a kablan. If the only one who's benefiting is the Jew, and the goy does not benefit, that's an issue. So let's begin. Just try quickly to touch this and get out of it alive. If somebody has a service contract, the person has a service contract with a technician, they have to come whenever there's an issue. And they want to come Shabbos. Why? The problem developed Friday. They want to show up now on Shabbos. The person wasn't kavei malachtoi. They don't have to come. They want to come on Shabbos. So the Ravid holds that that's forbidden. Why? He says, listen here, the Ravid says, they were davening, these goyim, if they daven, they were davening that they don't have to do anything this year. So basically, the reason why he's coming to work today, he got paid, he's getting paid this month, whether there's work or there's no work. Why is he coming to work today? For the Jew. Because the Jew needs to get the job done. Says the Ravid, it's asa. He says more than that. He says, if he didn't do it today, there may be more work to be done tomorrow. And the Yid will benefit from the fact that he did it today. Therefore, says the Ravid, it's a problem. The Rambam says, mutter. And that's the halacha. It's mutter. But that's only when it's no real reason to believe that tomorrow you will need this guy to be free. But if it's clear, you need this guy to be free. Lamashal, you have a super. He runs your building. He gets things done. If he doesn't do the work on Shabbos, since he's really busy and it's yitochen that tomorrow he will not have time to do things that happen tomorrow. So every day that something breaks, he fixes it right away. Even though you were not kovei malachto b'Shabbos, according to many achroinim, this is also to do. And therefore, you have to tell the super he should not do it. Now, there's an eitzah. You could pay him specifically to do this job. And if he's paying him specifically to do this job, he's going to lose something if he doesn't do the job today. Because if he didn't do it today, he's not going to make this money. So there, it would be mutter for him to do it. Because since he benefited directly from getting this job done today, therefore, that would be something that would be mutter for him to do. If a super is overloaded, mamish, he doesn't have a minute to breathe, then it's not even a question. What? That's good. That would be a great idea. Then it's posheta. Then the Ramah says that's like sochel l'chol ha'malachos, and therefore, since it's clear that you benefited, the Yid benefited from him working today, and the guy wouldn't mind if there's any work not done today, that would be something that would be awesome. And now let's touch a minute on the din of Maras Ayin. Maras Ayin, we said, if you get out of this Maria Avuav, you get out of Kovei Malachta b'Shabbos, you have a Ktzitza, you have a Kablan, we still have a problem with Marasayan. That means if someone has an employee who's working in his office, he has an employee who's doing work for him, even though he's a kabbalan, if he's working in his office, Chazal say, Marasayan, it looks like he's an employee that's paid as a schir yoim. And therefore, it's a problem. Even though he happens to be a kabbalan, if he's doing work for you, it's a problem. But if this person would be an employee, that everyone who hires such an employee only does it b'kablanus, he does not do it b'schirus, many Rishonim hold this is not an issue. That means, let's talk about a moment, a repair person who repairs your stove, your dishwasher, an electrician, a plumber. This is never done, or kemat never done b'schir yoim. This is done b'kablanus. So says these Rishonim, no issue. This person is allowed to come into your room, into your house, and do it b'Shabbos, as long as you are not kaveh malachtoi. What's the problem? Marasayan, he doesn't look like a schir yoim because everybody knows that he's a kabbalan, because that's the only way this job is performed, only with kabbalanus. The Bir Halacha says, I know you have, we're going to talk about it in a minute. Give me a minute. Comes the Bir Halacha and says, no, there's a Shoinim that hold that there's a new Marasayan, a different Marasayan, that people do not realize the difference between a schir yoim and a kabbalan. And therefore, the Bir Halacha says that's still a problem. Many Achroinim do not agree with the Bir Halacha, and the Mishnah Berurah himself in Reish Nun Beis seems to also bring the Chai Adam and others that seem to hold that this is not a problem. And therefore, if this would be the entire issue, this would be okay. But if it's in your house, you have another issue. And that is, if it's something's going on in your house, it is a maris ayin that it looks like you were kaveh malachta b'Shabbos, that he should do this work for you on Shabbos. And therefore, that itself is an issue of kaveh malachta b'Shabbos, and therefore, that's itself an issue of maris ayin, and therefore that's something that's us. But, if this person began his job before Shabbos, and he's now in your house, and he's in the middle of fixing your washing machine, and your washing machine is in the middle of being, and it turns Shabbos. So you tell him, you kick him out the door, you tell him, hello, Marasayan, get out. So he says, 1 second, what's the Marasayan? Maybe the schir yoim, one who fixes a washing machine is always a kabbalan. Maybe it was kaveh malachta b'Shabbos. It wasn't kaveh malachta b'Shabbos, he started doing it Erev Shabbos. Maybe Erev Shabbos, I told him he must stay on Shabbos. That kaveh malachta, that gzeira is not awesome mishum maras ayin, kemevur b'shulchan aruch HaRav. Right. But he was since he started on Erev Shabbos, if you would know the entire story, he started Erev Shabbos, says in Rav Shulchan Aruch Mefurish, that that's not kaveh malachta b'Shabbos. And therefore, you don't have to throw him out. Now I'm going to end with a story, and I'm finishing this year. I want to tell you what Yidden are about. This is an emes story from 2018. Now from Verzeitische Yidden, 40 million years ago. We're talking about today, 2018. There was a Yid who had a Baal Malach in his house fixing a pipe. He had problems with the sewer or something. He was fixing his pipe, and it was Erev Shabbos, and it was taking longer and longer and longer and longer. Bekitzer, he looks at the Zeiger, it says, it's about to be Shkias HaChamah. So he tells the guy, HaRav Goy, out. So the guy tells him, hello, you're not normal. If I go out now, this pipe is leaking. You're going to have a flood. He said, leave. The guy left. After Shabbos, he had 10 feet of water in his house. So a Yid told me, he knows this person, he asked him, are you Meshuggah? You couldn't find a hatter? You could have come to this shir, you would have heard a hatter. Well, but Mokum Hefsid, Kobe Emono, there's no problem of Marasayan. So why'd you do that? So he said, I don't understand you. For doires, Yidden are being moisen nefesh for Shabbos. When do we have the echetimsa to be moisen nefesh for Shabbos? Never. I got an opportunity. I took it. I was moisen nefesh for Shabbos. Raboisai, take this very to heart. Yes, you may find a Teirim. Yes, some Teirim are good. They're good for B'diavad. Oh, but what Mesiras Nefesh am I going to do for Shabbos? That's a question we need to ask ourselves. And the more we're Mesiras Nefesh for Shabbos, the more Shabbos will do for us. Yashar Koach.